everyone. I'm Brian Bates, and I trust Google Maps without questioning it.
West on.
I'm Linda DeYoung, and I unironically use the Kahoot music at parties.
And this is the One-to-One podcast, brought to you by the Learning Technology Center. Well, hey everyone, welcome back to season 2 and to episode 1 of a new season of the One-to-One podcast. We're excited to get things kicked off again here, and I'm even more excited to be joined by a new co-host, Linda DeYoung. So Linda, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and talk a little bit about what you do at the LTC and share your thoughts on the podcast.
Hi, Brian. Thanks for having me for season 2. I'm excited to work as your co-host. Like you said, my name's Linda, and I am the LTC's new online learning program manager, meaning that I work with a lot of our online content, webinars, podcasts like this one, and our online courses. And I'm just really excited to be starting a new season, getting into some great interviews with EdTech leaders and professionals, and also just playing around with some new fun format things. And so, yeah, I'm excited to get into it. Well, speaking of getting into it today, our podcast is all centered around creative ways to innovate, revamp, and supercharge your classroom projects using EdTech tools. And I actually wanted to get your thoughts about creative tech tools, specifically looking at how we see this happening in the media, right? How we see pop culture imitating real life here. And you might be familiar with a little franchise called Back to the Future.
Yep, I've heard of it.
Oh yeah, it's a good one, right? A classic, an oldie. So picture this, right? Back to the Future Part 2. Marty McFly and scientist Doc Brown travel to the year 2015 to prevent Marty's future son from making a terrible mistake that will ruin his family.
Great Scott!
Sounds familiar to Part 1. When they arrive in the crazy future of 2015, which back then seemed like so far in the future, we, the viewer, are presented with a vision of the future that's filled with imaginative technology. We see hoverboards, which are basically self-propelled skateboards in this universe. They glide effortlessly through a chase scene. We see flying cars that provide transportation in a three-dimensional and congestion-free way. And of course, Marty and Doc Brown time travel to the future in the iconic DeLorean, which has been upgraded from the original franchise with a fusion energy reactor, which is much more environmentally friendly than plutonium. So, obviously, the director, Robert Zemeckis, had a vision for 2015, which in his mind was the far future, where technology was being used in these really new and innovative ways. Brian, I'm curious to kind of pick your brain. Why do you think that directors and people in general like to imagine creative tech like flying cars and hoverboards?
Yeah, I think, when you think about the different, the way that the future is portrayed and how technology is portrayed in the future in movies of, we're talking mid to late 80s here with the Back to the Future franchise, it's the idea of what's possible, what would be really, really cool. And it's funny because you think about the things that have been innovative for technology. And I think about one of the things that I love the most about technology for me in my personal life is just like home automation and being able to turn the lights off or on or whatever without getting out of bed, or making sure that my garage door's down, or, having the thermostat adjust to whether I'm home or not. I think those are things that those aren't really that cool to think about as like a dream of like in the future of, man, I can't wait until there's a time when I can control my oven with the sound of my voice. I mean, nobody thinks about that. Nobody's worried about baking bread when they dream about what technology looks like. But it's the nice thing is it's like that when we set our targets high for something like a hoverboard or a flying car, no matter what happens, we're pushing the envelope of technology to what it can do and what it's able to accomplish for us. So I think that We always have this idea of this dream of what could happen, and then the end result are these things that we find to be really useful and really purposeful in our lives.
Yeah, and it's almost like we have realized that maybe a hoverboard or a flying car is not the first priority. That maybe the first priority is that people want things to just improve their basic quality of life. So in a way, I think these mundane kind of uses of technology, like baking bread, turning on the oven, it almost is a creative use of technology in a way because it's taking a problem that we have, right? Which is I don't want to get out of bed in the morning without my thermostat turned to the temperature I like, or I want my coffee to auto brew in the morning. We're taking an issue like that and we're thinking, how can we creatively fix this problem so that my life is just a little bit more bearable every morning when I get up? And I love that.
Yeah, I agree. It's that idea of we think about what problem does a hoverboard solve for us? It's a cool way of getting around. Um, but a lot of innovation and technology is all about finding a problem and finding the solution to it using technology. That's a huge piece of innovation when it comes to technology. And so, no, we don't really have an issue with being able to fly around on a hoverboard, but we do have things that we need to make our lives easier, to simplify our lives, to make things more approachable. So I think that that's why it happens. We end up getting
Mhm.
the maybe the boring innovations instead of the cool flying cars.
I mean, there are some really creative innovations that have, come out of recent, just pushing the envelope in tech. And I think there are parts of Zemeckis' vision from Back to the Future that have manifested today. Um, like, for example, the replacement of plutonium with like a smarter and more environmentally friendly solution. I mean,
Mhm.
we're starting to see that already, that
Yeah.
technology is moving more towards sustainability and more towards conservation of the resources of our planet. So what do you think? Are there any things you can think of that have really manifested from this crazy vision of the future?
You're absolutely right. We don't have a flying car, but we have a more environmentally friendly car and something that doesn't burn fuel with our electric vehicles. And so,
Mhm.
there are innovative things that come about from technology that aren't the exact same, but I mean, yeah, right there, we're talking about electric powered cars that are starting to dominate um, the spaces out there. We've got these cars that can even drive themselves, and so
Mhm.
there's a lot of different exciting innovations that don't fit the exact flying car model, but we are pushing the boundaries of what we're able to do with technology.
Yeah, how exciting that maybe someday we'll be able to have completely self-driving cars and that 3-hour, trip to the next state over will become much more enjoyable and manageable because you can read a book instead of having to focus on the road, or you can catch up on, whatever you want to catch up on, call a friend or just hang out in the car and not have to worry about that. Um, yeah, I think that that's so valuable to be giving more time back to ourselves and more enjoyment out of these mundane things that we have to do, like driving.
Yeah, and we're sitting here talking about these real big things like driving cars and using technology to be creative to uh, change these amazing transportation methods. Today, let's focus on maybe how to use technology to transform and change the way that we teach and be creative with our teaching and teaching strategies and the way that we build lessons for our students. So, what do you say? You want to get started?
I think that sounds great.
All right, we're joined today by Eric Curts, educator and author of the blog Control Alt Achieve and the book Control Alt Achieve Rerouting Your Classroom with Creative Google Projects. He's been a speaker at numerous national conferences, including the Illinois Education Technology Conference coming up in November here in Springfield, Illinois. So, Eric, thanks for joining us today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here chatting and really excited about the upcoming conference. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful event.
Well, yeah, welcome. We're excited to have you here. why don't we start off by just having you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what makes you go?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am an educator in Northeast Ohio, south of Cleveland, if that gives people kind of an idea where to place me. This is my 33rd year in education. So been doing this a long time. I started off as a middle school math teacher, taught middle school math for 7 years and absolutely loved it. But I also loved technology. And so I ended up making a switch from a classroom teacher to a tech coach or a tech integration specialist. It's called different things, depending on where you are. And I've been doing that ever since. So I was at that district for 21 years total, and now I'm at the county office. We have a in Ohio, we have educational service centers, ESCs. So I work at an ESC. I've been there for 12 years now. I still support that same district I was at, but now I support 35 districts up in the Northeast Ohio area. And that's my day job doing that. And then on the side, probably for the last 25 years or so, I've done my own consulting business as well, where I travel outside of my local area, travel all around the country, working with schools and conferences and organizations and sharing things like that. So yeah.
Well, we're
Awesome, thank
so
you.
happy to have you here. And we like to get to know our guests a little bit by doing something fun at the beginning. So I thought we'd play a quick round of this or that. There's
Okay.
no need to overthink these answers. Just say whatever pops into your head first. No explanations required. What do you say? Do you want to give it a go?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so here we go. First one, Google Docs or Microsoft Word?
Well, Google Docs. Yeah. I'm a Googly person. Nothing against Microsoft Word. I think it's a fantastic tool, but yeah, I've been a pretty big Google user for quite a long time. Yeah.
I saw that coming.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
for
That's an
sure.
easy one.
Desert or tundra?
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to go with desert because I don't like the cold.
Me neither.
But I live in Ohio. I live in Northeast Ohio, and we're heading into winter, so it's coming. But no, I could use some nice dry sunshine for right now.
Absolutely. Digital whiteboard or a traditional whiteboard?
Well, I think I'm going to go digital whiteboard. There's just so many opportunities for, students to collaborate, to work together on it, to be able to easily add multimedia. So much possibility there. Yeah.
Virtual field trips or in-person field trips?
Well, if I have my choice, I'd say in person. It'd be great to actually be somewhere. Now I get it. We can't always do that. So I'm glad we have a
Yes.
virtual field trips. But if you can go in person, then there's nothing quite like touching the stuff and actually being there to see things. Yeah.
Dogs or cats?
Oh, come on. I got both.
Oh, man.
I'm going to say cats. I'm going to say cats. Don't get me wrong. We have a dog and three cats. I absolutely love our dog. And I've had dogs my entire life, but I've also had cats. I would just say cats just because of the flexibility that they can be a lot more independent. So if I do need to travel, which I do quite a bit, it's so much easier to be like, okay, I can leave the cats, overnight with no
Yes.
problem. The dog, I can't do that. I always have to find, okay, how are we taking care of the dog when I'm traveling? Yeah.
And just because I'm curious, what are the names of your dogs and cats?
So one dog, and that is Stella, and currently three cats. We've got Bean, we've got Sparky, and we've got Hoodie. Now Hoodie got her name because we found her in the hood of our car.
Oh,
It's worth noting. I said current cats because we tend to be a cat rescue here. We're a bit out in a rural area, even though we're south of Cleveland. We're kind of out in a little bit of a rural area here, and so I think over the last couple of years we've fostered, I believe, 13 cats that have wound
oh.
up here, had kittens. We bring them in, we take care of them, we get them used to people, and we find them new homes. And so at the moment, nope, the ones we have are actually ours. Although Sparky and Hoodie were found that way. They were part of that. They were the foster fails, as you say. We ended up keeping them. Yeah. Yeah.
Like it.
And then the last one here, Eric, podcast or blog?
Well, I guess it's going to depend. I'm going to say blog, just because
Wow.
I know if it's me generating something, I'm going to say blog. If it's me consuming something, probably podcast.
Mm.
And I say blog just because it's getting harder and harder and harder to find time to, create things. I have a podcast. I barely post anything to it anymore. I can get things up on the blog a lot easier. So for me, it's like, well, at least I shared something. But when it comes to
Mm.
consuming things, yeah, I have way too many podcast subscriptions, way too many. And so that's how I consume so much while I'm traveling or mowing the yard or whatever the case is.
Well, thanks for doing that. That was get to know you a little bit, and
Yeah.
I like that we put you on the spot there at the end because you're on a podcast, but
Yeah.
you spend so much time doing a blog. That was a little fun on our part. So,
No worries.
well, speaking of the blog, your blog and also your book are all about using EdTech tools to innovate and transform the learning experience for students. What inspired you to start Control Alt Achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, part of it is as an educator, I've always felt it's good to share. That's not always the case, and I don't want to put pressure on anybody. I understand everybody feels that way. But if I ever came up with a cool idea or a neat lesson plan or something like, well, if I've taken the time to put this together for my local school district, maybe somebody else would benefit from it. And so it's like, you know what? Just put it out there. Just share it. It might not be perfect, but somebody might benefit from it. And so that was just sort of my mindset, for the last 33 years that I've been doing this stuff, is just share, 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 share. And so eventually I realized I need a place to put all of this stuff because I keep sharing all these things, all these neat things. And so Control Alt Achieve was basically, okay, this is the one-stop shop. This is the place where I'm going to pull all of this together. And the type of things, you say motivation there, it was mostly the fact that, the school district I was in, we had a tight budget. A lot of schools that I support, it's a similar thing. So a lot of times, yeah, the kind of things I'm sharing are how can we use the tools that we have in creative ways, say, okay, I've got docs, I've got slides, I've got sheets, we've already got them, rather than buying some other software package. Hey, we could use slides to do stop motion animation, or we could use docs for blackout poetry, or we could use, it's the idea of trying to come up with creative ways to use the tools that we already have. And that was typically the motivation for the things that I put on the blog.
Well, and I appreciate that, and I want to share my kind of personal connection to it. And you said the word share a lot, and you legitimately share. So many
Mm.
resources and tools on your blog are free. Just make a copy and go ahead and use it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
in 2014, I went to a district that was one-to-one. They just started one-to-one, and I'm sixth grade math teacher, I was middle school math teacher, and I'm like, man, how do I use technology every day? Like I used to sign up for a lab and use it a couple times a year, and 99% of the time I'd say, if I want to do this, what would it look like? And I'd find it on your blog and I could make a copy,
Mm.
adapt it to how I wanted to use it and do it for free. So thank you for having so much free resources, templates and things, because it saved me when I was starting out on my one-to-one teaching journey. And I think that a lot of people appreciate finding
Mhm.
high quality resources and templates that are just there to share. So I appreciate that.
Well, that means a lot. It really does. Thank you for sharing that. You don't always know when you're creating something. You're like, is anybody going to use this? And then you do hear stuff, and that's encouraging. But I guess what I would say is, yeah, just as a blanket statement, yeah, everything that I put on the blog, I release under a Creative Commons license. That license is basically just, hey, as long as you leave a link back to where you got it, you can
Mhm.
copy, adapt, reuse, however you want, and that's for several reasons. I mean, one is, I'm that's the philosophy. I'm all about sharing. I think we should share with others.
Mhm.
Another thing is I want to reach more kids than less.
Mhm.
I mean, I remember the build a snowman activity when I made that years and years and years ago. Yeah, I could have, put that behind a paywall or something like that. And sure, it would have, probably still reached a lot of folks. But no, by just making it free, I have no idea how many thousands and thousands and thousands of kids have done that activity. But I guess on top of all of that, I would also just say, I mean, there's nothing I've created that I created. It's not like, oh, this is my thing. I was inspired by this really cool post this other person put up, and I saw this really neat thing at a conference. There's nothing we come up with that's ours. We are standing on the shoulders of others. We're inspired by others. And so I want to do the same. I want people to take these things and iterate on top of them and create new things from it. So that's sort of the thought process behind why it is the way it is.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Eric. Yeah, I mean, free resources are so important right now. And I love the angle of your blog and your book is all about how to use tools creatively in the classroom, how to make learning more authentic for students. I'm interested to know, how do you think teachers can leverage student voice and choice through technology in project-based learning?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I really think a lot of it comes down to literally giving them choices. You think of any particular project you want students to show their understanding, there's a temptation to simply say, okay, here is the project. You are going to all write an essay, or you're all going to do a particular thing. And I get that. I get that. It's consistent. It's like, okay, I'm going to be grading the exact, same thing over and over and over again. That's good. Well, but there's so many other ways that students can, first of all, learn information, and secondly, communicate their understanding of it. And so I'm not just saying let them go, wild and just say pick anything you want, but do a choice board. Do something where you say, okay, here are 5 options, here are 8 options, 10 options, whatever it might be. And what I like about that is a number of things. I mean, one is, think about, if a student is going to express themselves, if they can do it in a medium that they feel comfortable in, a couple of things are going to happen. First of all, they're going to be more excited about it because they enjoy using that medium. But secondly, I think you're going to get a more accurate picture of what they really understand. Like if you told me, Eric, I want you to explain photosynthesis, but I want you to do it as an oil painting, it's like, that's not my skill. I'll do my best, but chances are you're not going to get a good representation of what I really understand, because the medium is going to get in the way. It's going to, perhaps be an issue there. By letting students choose a medium, whether it's they want to write a story, maybe they do want to make an image, maybe they want to make a video, maybe they want to do a song, maybe they want to do an infographic, whatever it is, if it's something they feel comfortable with, you're going to get a more accurate representation of what they know, and they're going to be excited about it. On top of that, I know it's tougher to grade because everyone's a little bit different, but it's maybe kind of fun too, because now you get to see all of these different representations. And what's really cool is, depending upon what these students create, it may be something that you can reuse. What about that kid that gets so excited? They make this amazing stop motion animation that explains something. Well, guess what? You've now got a teaching resource that you can use next year with students. And so the students are now feeding into the class. So that I think is just a win-win-win all the way around.
And that's really cool. Thinking about all those different options that you can give, all those different choices. Can you kind of expand on like a project or a lesson where you saw that technology completely transformed the learning experience for students? Like kind of like something that you saw where you're like, wow, this is really this completely changed how they experienced this lesson, this unit, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many. I would probably say most recently, I don't know if you're familiar with the Edu Protocols movement, if that rings a bell for you, or for those who are listening, if they're familiar with it. I've started incorporating a lot more Edu Protocols into trainings that I do, and encouraging teachers to do that. What basically the idea behind it is just activities that use technology that involve the students more in the learning process intentionally. So I'll just give an example so that we can kind of flesh it out a little bit. There was an activity I came up with called the tier list. Now, I didn't invent the tier list concept. That's been around for years and years and years, but I made an activity based off of it. Again, going back to the idea, there's nothing that I've ever created that is mine. I saw something cool and said, hey, let's put a spin on this. And basically, a tier list is just an activity where you've probably seen this if you go on YouTube and type in tier list followed by anything. There's going to be somebody who's made a video where they say, okay, I'm going to rank every Stephen King novel, and they have this tier list that goes, you got your A, B, C, D, E, F, but there's an S tier at the very top. That's like the best tier possible. And they basically drag and drop, the cover images for different books, well, I think this is B tier. I think this is, D tier. Oh, this is an S tier book, and, or whatever the top, it doesn't matter. There's tier list videos for everything that's possible. Well, when I saw those, I thought, you know what, this is a really educational activity. Whoever's doing this, they've got to be doing, a lot of thought. They're comparing, they're contrasting, they're prioritizing, they're defending their rationale. These are things we want our students to do. So basically I made an EduProtocol style Google slideshow template for a tier list and said, here's how the activity works. Basically, you create the slide, you make copy of the slideshow, you put your topic in there, the students go in, they rank things, but then they get with a partner and they show their tier list to a partner and they find something that they most disagree on. And they take a few minutes and they defend their rationale. Well, why do I think that should be there? What about you? And then they submit their final results through a Google form. And then as a class, the teacher then has the bar graphs of everybody's responses and will pick out 2 or 3 of the most widely spread responses and say, okay, as a class, let's discuss these. And so that was what I thought might be a cool activity. I have heard so many wonderful comments and feedback from schools and teachers saying, I have never seen my students so engaged. I've never seen them, just so involved and, passionately defending, what they believe. And the class discussions, just rose to such a great level. And that's the kind of thing that I get excited about. We're talking about using technology. Sure. Now you could probably do this technically, without technology, you could find other ways to do it on paper or whatever, but technology really helps with it. It makes it a lot smoother. You're using technology to get students thinking critically, communicating, whether it's, with a partner or the whole group and really digging deeper into that topic. And so I think that's a great example of one where I've heard from a lot of teachers saying it really did make a significant difference in their classroom and the engagement of the students.
I like the opportunity in that spot right there to kind of encourage civil discourse and something that right now we need more than ever is how can you disagree with somebody or try to argue your point in a way that's more of a constructive argument as opposed to shouting in the void. So I think that's another you can throw some digital literacy pieces in there too and reflect that back.
Absolutely, you got it.
So that's a great example. I love hearing that.
Yeah, I really connect with that example too, because as someone who avidly watches tier list content online, I immediately was like, oh, that would be so fun. I would love to do that just in any setting, a work setting, a classroom setting. But then also it just meets students right where they're at because chances are they're also consuming content like that and doing tier lists. Like I know for me, even, sometimes me and my friends who live long distance will hop on a call together and literally do tier lists together as an activity, like as something fun to do together. So I love that. It really brings like relevance right back into the classroom for the students.
Linda, you can't bring that up. You can't bring that up without sharing like what's an example of a tier list that you've done with your friends.
Oh, so one of the tier lists that we did was every depiction of the Grinch and whether we rank them S to F. So we looked at like the Jim Carrey Grinch and the movie, the original Grinch and the book Grinch, and then also like the really cursed musical Grinch that there was like a direct-to-TV musical. And so we just like pulled every Grinch that we could find and ranked the Benedict Cumberbatch Grinch, and we did a Grinch tier list. So yeah.
I love it. I love it. And you're right. The students do know this. I mean, I'll show this
Oh,
to
yeah.
teachers, and a lot of times when I'm doing the training, very few hands will go up from the teachers. But then as soon as they
Mm,
do it with their students, as soon as it's on the screen, the kids are, that's a tier list. I mean, they just
the
know it
tier
right
list.
away, and
Yes.
that's the thing. It's trying to, tap into something that our students already are comfortable with and just putting an educational spin on it.
Mhm.
So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome, Eric. Like, great idea. Would you be willing to maybe share your top 3 EdTech tools that you feel every teacher should be using in their classroom?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It is.
So I'll cheat a little bit on it. So the first one I'm going to say is just the Google Suite. Now, it's
Mhm.
not a tool. I know I'm cheating. It's
That's
a bunch of
okay.
tools, but I would say, the Google Suite, the Google, let's say Google Workspace for Education. I still am getting used to how Google keeps renaming it. It was
Yeah.
Google Apps when I started, then it was
Yep.
G Suite, now it's Google
Mhm.
Workspace for Education. So I'm trying my best. But I would
Mm.
say that is just such a wonderful collection of tools. And that's what the whole Control Alt Achieve book is. It's just how to take docs, sheets, slides, drawings, and just use them in creative ways. And if you have a suite like that, it's not just, well, I guess now we've got a word processor. Now we've got a
Mhm.
multimedia slideshow tool. No, no, no. You've got dozens and dozens and dozens of projects you can do because these are truly tools, not an end in themselves. They're a tool to create more. So I'd say the Google Workspace suite, without a doubt. The second one, again, slightly cheating, I would say the large language model of your choice. Whether
Mm.
it's Chat GPT, Gemini, Claude, Copilot, Pi, Mistral, Meta, whatever it is, a large language model of your choice that you are comfortable with. I can't imagine, not leveraging the power of an AI
Yeah.
chat bot at this point. Although Google has been my main, thing I've trained on for years and years and years. The last 2 years, it's almost exclusively AI. I mean, it seems like every conference, every workshop, everything I'm doing, it's pretty much AI content, and for very good reason. It's an incredibly powerful tool that is coming alongside and providing teachers with help. When I was in college, I was a TA for one of my professors, and then when I became a teacher, I'm like, hey, where's my TA? And we don't get teaching assistants. Well, now we do. Let Chat GPT, let Gemini, let Claude be your TA. Now, again, it's an assistant. It's not do AI is not here to do your work. It's here to help you do your work better. It's here
Mhm.
to assist you. You still have a responsibility. You still have to check it all and put your own personality into it. But my gosh, if it can save you some time, that's time you can spend with your students. That's time you can do self-care. That's time you can take care of other things. So that's great. And then the third thing I would say, if I wanted to go a little more specific, I'm still going to stay in the AI realm though. Um, I at the moment, I'm just really excited about Brisk Teaching. I just can't say
Mm.
enough good things about that tool. And again, I know I'm leaving out dozens of amazing tools, and I mean them no ill will by doing so. There are so many great tools out there,
Mhm.
but Brisk Teaching, at the moment, if I was going to say, what would I tell a teacher? A tool to use in the AI realm besides having just an AI chatbot. Brisk is a Chrome extension. So what's neat about it is when you install it, it follows you everywhere. So it's not,
Mhm.
you're not saying, oh, here's this article. I really should take this and go over to Chat GPT with it. Brisk is just hanging down there in the bottom the whole time. And what it lets you
Mm.
do, the free version has like 20 tools built into it. So you can click on Brisk and you can say, okay, from this article, from this YouTube video, from this document, from whatever, I want to make a quiz. I want to make a slideshow. I want to make a rubric. I want to make a lesson plan. I want to make DOK leveled questions. And it just does it, or I want
Mm.
to re-level things so that they're appropriate for different reading levels. Or I want to provide personalized feedback for my students. It can do that. Or I want to create custom AI chatbots for my students to interact with. It kind of does. It's the Swiss Army knife of AI tools. So that's what I would pair with the other things that we've mentioned at the moment today. Those are the three I would recommend.
So to follow up on that, I think about, as a listener is tuning in here and they hear, oh, Brisk, okay, I want to check that out. I've never heard of that before, and I want to maybe see what that's all about. Or, I've been kind of hesitant on using a large language model in my, for my teaching. Or even if they've been like, I've been to your session, the Hipster Google, tools you probably haven't heard of.
Mhm.
You let's say that our listener hears of a new tech app, tool, resource, whatever it is, and they're unsure of like how to just get started. How do you recommend teachers approach introducing new technology to students? And the students may have varying tech skills. The teacher may have, be coming from a different tech skill area than maybe the next teacher next door to them. So how do you recommend teachers approach introducing new tech into their classroom?
Yeah, I mean, there's no perfect answer for this, but some because it's going to depend, on
Mhm.
a lot of factors. But a couple things that I think are important. Um, One is if you are introducing a new tool, it can be helpful the first time you do it to do just something fun with it. You don't have to introduce the tool and teach new subject area content at the same time. That can sometimes be a little difficult because now they're trying to learn this new tool and how it works, and they're trying to learn information for your class. So, like when I do something like the tier list as an example, I usually encourage them, hey, the first time you do it, have them be ranking their favorite fast food restaurants. Do something that has nothing to do with your content so that they can focus on learning the tool and just have fun with it. So that's the focus of that. Once they get that comfort level, excellent. Next time, now let's start integrating in our classroom content. And now they have the comfort level with the tool. We can build on top of it with content. So I think that's important. The other thing I would say is don't feel you have to be an expert. Yeah, do get comfortable. Don't just don't just throw something at your students without ever trying it out. Things could go really wrong there. Yeah, test it out, try it out. But you don't have to be an expert. If you think, okay, I cannot use this tool until I'm an absolute expert, you're never going to use any tool because they constantly evolve and change. It's okay to have a comfort level with something and just say, let's use this in class, and maybe something goes wrong, or maybe the student asks a question, well, what about this, Mr. Kurtz, and you don't know the answer. Well, that's okay. It's okay for a number of reasons. One is I think it helps us model for our students the concept of being a lifelong learner. We want them to be learning. We should. So listen, I don't always know the answers to things. This happens when I do trainings. I mean, I'll be in the middle of a training, and people have paid me good money to come in and do a training, and somebody asks a question, and I'm like, I don't know, and I say, let's poke a stick at it. And I say, it's time now to model. Well, how do we figure this out? Well, let's work through it. Let's see, what can we do to figure this out? And it models the idea of lifelong learning, of having a growth mindset. And I think that's really important for our students to see that. And it allows our students to be part of the solution. Let them say, oh, hey, I found this really cool thing, and let them share that. So I think, taking the stress off yourself of having to be an expert is really going to go a long way to using new tools in your classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, um, as you're talking there, the comfortability with saying, I don't know this, or just trying things out with your students in real time, because they'll know things that you won't. I think sometimes, it teachers feel very overwhelmed by the rapid pace of tech changes in education, and they don't quite know like how to address those feelings of being overwhelmed, or what if a student does ask that question. Do you have any advice that you would give to teachers who are maybe feeling overwhelmed with AI and everything that's coming down the pike here? How do you stay caught up? How do you not feel overwhelmed?
Well, I do tend to address that when I do a lot of my trainings because I'll be at the end of a 3-hour workshop with people and I just showed them, 50 AI tools. And the last thing I want them to do is to walk away feeling overwhelmed and frustrated. That's not what I want. And so there was a blog post I did years and years and years ago about the KISS method, keep it simple, sweetie, shall we say? Uh, and it was the idea of use technology, but keep it simple. Just pick one thing. Just do one thing. You don't have to make this amazing lesson plan that incorporates 5 different tech tools and has all these different steps. Um, because, yeah, it might be really cool, but how likely are you going to repeat that? It's sort of like when you're doing a graduate class or something, and you've got to put together this amazing lesson plan. It's like you do it, but how realistic is it that you're like, okay, I'm never doing that again? So what I encourage you, just keep it simple. Pick a thing to tweak. Say, I just want to get more student to student interaction, or I want to increase a little creativity, or I want to do something where students reflect a little bit more in this activity, and just add a tool, just one tool that you add in there, and iterate on that. See how it goes, because there's a good chance you're then going to build on top of it. And it's also a good chance if your colleagues see you doing something, they're going to be inspired by it. They're not going to be like, oh, well, Linda or Brian can do that because they're ed tech wizards. They're going to see, oh, I can do that. Okay, that's cool. That's a neat thing. So I think small iterative steps are so important. Again, don't feel like you got to be the absolute expert master who combines everything, or you'll never actually do anything. So small steps is the way to go.
Well, we've talked a little bit about AI and just talking about the rapid change of ed tech. So I'm going to ask you to predict the future, if you would. Just based on what your experience and everything you've been doing and everything you're going to continue to do, what trends do you see in ed tech happening over the next 5 to 10 years? How do you think that ed tech is going to change? What do you think it's going to move towards? What kind of thoughts do you have on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's a tough thing. Obviously, we're just
Yeah.
kind of spitballing there, but I would say for sure it's going to be AI driven. This is it's not a flash in the pan. This is not
Mhm.
something that's this season's new hot thing. AI is here. It's here to stay. And here's what I get excited about. Yeah, we've mentioned a lot of AI examples about how it can save you time and help you create a quiz or something like that. That's nice. I mean, that's good. I don't want to say that's not. It is, but that's not where the transformation is really going to take place. I mean, if it saves you some time, fantastic. That's great. What I get excited about, where I think I see the future going, is AI allowing us to do things we've always known were good, but they weren't practical.
Mm.
So take personalized learning, yeah, that's a wonderful thing. We all agree that it is that, well, let's put it this way. I know you've probably heard this. Sal Khan did a really nice speech probably about a year ago where he referenced Benjamin Bloom and his 2 sigma problem. He described it as, and the idea was, he was saying, okay, how can we move student achievement up? How can we increase student achievement? And he was saying, if you just have a normal class with a normal bell-shaped curve of achievement, um, you know, if you implement, at his point, he was talking about mastery learning. If you implement mastery learning, you can move all students up 1 standard deviation, 1 sigma in achievement. And he goes, that's really the best we can hope for. He goes, although there is a way to move 2 sigmas, 2 standard deviations up, but it's just not realistic. If you give every single student a personal tutor, they move 2 standard deviations up, but nobody can do that. So let's work on mastery learning. Well, guess what, folks? We can do it now. We now have AI technology that can come alongside and be a 24-hour personal tutor to assist our students. Another tool that I easily could have added to my top 3 would be like School AI. Cannot say enough good things about them. You basically choose, customize, or create a custom AI chatbot that students interact with. And it's school safe. It anonymizes everything. It doesn't save anything for the AI, but it saves it all for you. It's all FERPA compliant, all that kind of stuff. What it does is it allows every student to have an individualized conversation. So when they're talking to the AI tutor or the AI Abraham Lincoln or the AI writing assistant, it's meeting them where they're at. It's bringing them along. It's meeting their interests or where they're confused. It's helping re-explain things. It's helping them go further if they're ready to go further. And so you're still teaching, but now you've got a classroom of assistants where every student is getting their own AI assistant. And so things like that, that's an example of something that's not scalable normally, but now
Mhm.
it is going to be. And we need to start stepping back and saying, what are all those things that we know are good, but we've said, we just can't do it, So things like, oral assessments. I think there's a
Mm.
lot of value in having a student express things, to speak their answers, to either give a speech or to explain how they solved a problem or to define something in their own words, but to speak it and actually share it that way. And we're like, hey, Eric, that's great. But yeah, I've got a class of 125 kids. Even if they spoke for I have 125 kids across all my classes. If they speak for 2 minutes each, that's 4 hours that I have to, listen to and process. It's just not realistic. So how often do we do it? Not a lot. Well, now we've got tools like Snorkel. Snorkel allows you to create a problem. The kids come in, click record. They speak to the AI. It records everything they say. It gives them a whiteboard they can draw on. It grabs everything from that, and Snorkel grades them based upon the exemplars you set up. And then you can go in and see who's struggling and who's not, and on and on and on and on. All of these things where we know these are good practices, but they just weren't scalable
Mm.
before. And so that's what I see the future being, is personalized, individualized learning for students, being
Mm.
able to meet them where they're at. And so our role, yeah, it does change a bit. We're going to be a little more facilitator. Still, we're going to be instructors, but not just the sage on the stage. We really can become that guide on the side. We really can start moving more to that role, because we're going to have the additional support of the AI to come along and help us and to give us amazing insights into our students, to be able to pull that content together so we can see who's really struggling. Okay, well, then now I am working one-on-one with that student, or I'm pulling a group of 5 students together because these are the ones that are struggling with that. And I know they're struggling with it because I did this exit ticket with School AI that helped me identify that. So that's what I see, and I'm really excited about that. It's the fact that we finally have the technology to do the things that we've been hoping for so long. I'm so glad that in my educational career, I lived long enough to see that this is finally happening. And now I always have to temper it. We have to guide this. We have to be cautious. Please don't get me wrong. I
Mhm.
don't ever want to come across as saying AI is the answer. It is an incredibly powerful tool. And so we need to use it properly. And so
Mhm.
I'll be doing an entire, session on, managing AI misuse, when we have the conference, because it's important that we balance this and talk about the
Mhm.
proper use of this tool, so that it is the most effective thing that we need it to be.
Thanks so much for answering all of our questions today, Eric. I did want to end our segment today. We like to end by asking our guests to think about a challenge that a teacher might be having in the classroom and to give advice, a response, a solution if that teacher is listening today, if you are that teacher listening. So I'm going to go ahead and read this challenge to you and then give you about 30 seconds to think about it and come up with a response. And for our listeners, maybe you also think of a response. How would
Mhm.
you address this challenge? And then we'll hear what you have to say. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, here is the challenge. A teacher wants to create more meaningful and engaging projects, but currently relies on EdTech tools for just basic substitution, like having students type essays or using Google Forms instead of traditional quizzes. They're ready to move beyond this and transform their teaching. What is the very first step that this teacher can take to start designing creative, student centered projects that go beyond simple substitution and truly enhance learning through technology? So, like I said, we're going to give you about 30 seconds to think about that one, and we'll see you afterwards. All right. That's 30 seconds. What are you thinking?
Oh my gosh. Well, so as much as I'd like to, start listing off amazing technology things, honestly, if you're saying what is the first step, if you really are
Mhm.
forcing me to pick the first step, it's not technology. The first step is they need to think, what are they trying to accomplish? What is their
Mhm.
learning goal? What are they wanting to increase? Because technology always has to be the support that gets us to the educational goal. It can't be tech for tech's sake. Like, oh, I've got to find a way to wedge
Mhm.
technology into my classroom. It still always comes back to, the curricular learning goals have to be the first thing. So is it that we're trying to increase, some critical thinking, or are we trying to increase collaboration? Are we trying to allow for, more ways for students to express their understanding? What is the goal? What is the thing that we're trying to accomplish? Only after that, then yeah, now we say, okay, well, what tech tools can help me with that? And I'm sure there's non-tech ways to do it as well, but since we're talking about technology, yeah, there's going to be loads of tech tools that then can come along and say, okay, so you're focusing on, increasing their ability to compare and contrast. Okay, then okay, let's start doing that. And so now we start looking at the technology tools that can possibly support that. Whether it's as simple as doing a Google slide or a Google drawing graphic organizer that, the entire class jumps in, and we start, adding things to a compare and contrast graphic organizer that you have, and it's more engaging, and everybody's, communicating and thinking, or they're doing it individually, whatever the case. So I know I feel like I'm kind of cheating there because it's not
No.
a tech answer, but I think it's so important that we remember
Mhm.
that the tech can't come first. It has to be, what's the specific learning goal? And then there's so much great tech out there. Find something that works for you. Connect with, people who are sharing neat ideas about technology, and try one of those that seems like it's going to be a good match. And again, start simple. Just do
Mhm.
one thing. So yeah.
Yeah, that I agree so much with, focusing on what is the goal here that we're trying to achieve, and then also keep it simple, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're looking to take that first step and you're thus far have just been kind of using tech as a substitution, but you want to do something creative, keep it real simple to start, build that confidence. And before you know it, you're just going to start naturally adding more and more and more creative tools into your classroom. So thanks so much for being our guinea pig engaging in that challenge. Brian, did you have
Absolutely.
anything you wanted to add too?
Yeah, I think that that's a great approach because I know I've done this in the past and I've seen others do it. I'm sure our listeners have done this before where you see this new tool or there's this new app. You're like, oh my gosh, I want to use that so bad. It's so cool. And then you kind of force fit it
Mhm.
into your instruction. And then that causes problems because it's like, well, it's not work. It's why is this why is this more of a hassle than it is helping? When I saw it demonstrated, I thought it was so cool, but it's because it doesn't really fit in with what you want to do. And I think that when you think about what do you want to accomplish, what's the main goal, then it's almost like that. I'm sure there's probably a Star Wars reference to this or something like that, where there's this enlightenment where it's like, oh, it all of a sudden came to me where, I this is what I want it to do, and so now the tech tool has appeared in front of me that fits that
Mhm.
purpose. So you're then using the appropriate tool in the appropriate way for your desired outcome, as opposed to just using it like you said, tech for tech's sake.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's really helpful to learn about all those tools like you
Mhm.
mentioned. It's good to, yeah, come to the conference and, go to the hipster session and learn, all these crazy unknown Google tools you didn't know about, because then they're in your mind and they're there to pull on when you say, okay, I do want to do that activity that accomplishes XYZ. Hey, I remember Eric shared this tool. That
Mhm.
tool might be a really good match.
Mhm.
So it's important that we learn about these tools so that they're in our toolbox and we can
Absolutely.
reference them when the time is right, when it makes
Mhm.
sense to support that learning outcome, or when we go back to student choice and voice, saying,
Mhm.
okay, well, I want you to show your understanding of this concept. okay, let me give you, 10 tools that you can use for this, and you can pick from these. And now you've got some, good ideas of tools that might be a good match for that situation.
This has been fantastic, and I can keep going, but eventually, at some point, you have to you have to wrap things up. And so, like, I kind of want to wrap up here by asking, we've mentioned the book, we've mentioned your blog, especially.
Yeah.
How can people find out more about you, get in touch with you, access those awesome resources? Where can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I mean, the blog is the central spot. On the blog, I do have a connect page. There's a bit.ly link that can get you straight there. It's bit.ly/CAA-connect for Control Alt Achieve. But if you just go to controlaltachieve.com, there's a tab that says connect at the top. That's where that goes. That's sort of like the one spot where you can find every possible way to connect with me, because here's the thing. I mean, yeah, I do the blog, but I also try to share anything I put on the blog lots of other ways, because people don't consume things all the same way. I've heard some people even like podcasts, believe it or not. So so on that page, I've got my email, I've got all my social medias, I've got my YouTube channel, I've got my newsletter, I've got a Facebook group, I've got an email discussion group. There's so many ways. Find what works for you to plug in so that you can be part of the conversation, because let's trust me, I want to learn from everybody else as well. It's not just a method for me to share my ideas. I want questions, I want suggestions, I want ideas. I always say when I'm doing a presentation, I'm not here today to present to you. I'm here today to learn with you, because I want to walk away with more ideas than I came. And so I'm hoping people will engage with me through all those different connection opportunities.
Eric, thanks so much for meeting with us today and sitting down one-to-one. And we are so excited to see you at the conference, and we'll be talking soon, I'm sure. But yes, thank you so much for being here.
It was my pleasure. Looking forward to the conference so much. Thanks so much.
If you love today's episode and are interested in hearing Eric speak again, he's one of our keynote speakers at IETC, November 13th through 15th in Springfield, Illinois. To register for the conference or find out more about what's going on at the conference, visit ltcillinois.org/IETC.
And if you're excited about season 2 of the One-to-One podcast, consider subscribing. All right, Brian, we'll see you next month, where we'll be sitting down one-to-one.